Here on Talk and Fight for another episode of Boxing News Today, coming to you live from the Mecca of Boxing, Toronto, Canada. All right, boxing fans, let's start off with a story out of Japan, a brief story, a quick little result featuring a bright young fighter named Katsuya Yasuda. He's now 13-1 and kept his WBO Asia Pacific lightweight belt by defeating number 11 ranked compatriot Ryuto Seike, who's now 10-6-1. He apparently knocked him down in 2 rounds, both rounds 2 and round 3, and then accelerated his attack to halt him at 1 minute 23 seconds of the 9th round in a scheduled 12-rounder, and that happened in Tokyo, Japan, the first show of 2024. So congratulations to that young man. And let's see if there's any others. No, there are no other fights to report from Japan. So let's move along then to our next story, which is concerning Anthony Joshua. So with respect to his rankings in the IBF, he might have expected to move up. But the IBF has decided to keep the number 2 spot open and keep Joshua at number 3, while Filip Hrgovic is number 1. So thus is no shortcut to the top for AJ. And what this all means really is that the IBF, if the IBF title is vacated or stripped from the winner of the February 17th fight between IBF, WBA, WBO heavyweight champ Alexander Usyk and WBC champ Tyson Fury, Joshua would then face Hrgovic. And then the winner of that fight faces another opponent for the vacant IBF belt. In other words, it says our friends over at boxingnews24.com, it would be more a step to the IBF crown for the Hrgovic-Joshua winner, which makes sense because the way it's being lined up now, it looks almost like AJ's being given the IBF title without having to do a lot of hard work to earn it. Joshua hasn't been maneuvered into the slot to fight for the IBF title without having to take any difficult opponents to grind it out the way regular heavyweights must do. The long and short of it is that Joshua must earn the IBF title this time and not have it basically given to him like it was in 2016 when he fought Charles Martin. So the number 3 Joshua versus number 1 Hrgovic winner could face number 4 Joseph Parker for the vacant IBF title unless the New Zealander refuses or is beaten on the March 8th card over in Saudi Arabia, which is likely if he faces Zhilai Zhang. If Parker doesn't take the fight, number 5 IBF Jared Anderson would be next up. Wouldn't that be a cracker? He would be a difficult fight for Joshua, who hasn't faced anyone like that in years. And you could imagine the kicking and screaming AJ's promoter, Eddie Hearn, would do if he was forced to fight Anderson. It makes sense for the IBF to have kept the number 2 spot vacant because Joshua should not have been allowed to inherit it automatically with his win over Otto Wallin, as that move was too crafted, allowing AJ to take the spot without fighting. One of the dangerous contenders is the IBF in the IBF's rankings. Making Joshua actually earn the title shot by beating Hrgovic, Parker, and Anderson makes more sense and gives meaning to being the IBF champion. Whoever emerges from these fights will be seen as a real champion, not a fighter who's maneuvered into the belt by cunning rather than sweat and hard work. Well stated, lads. Good article. Thank you. All right. So let's hear what Eddie Hearn has to say. Why not? So this is courtesy of boxing-social.com. Matchroom promoter Eddie Hearn has responded to Carl Froch's comments regarding Anthony Joshua's next contest, where he called it basically a money grab, where Anthony Joshua is going to be facing Francis Ngannou, as I just said. Ngannou gave Tyson Fury one of the toughest fights when they met back in October, flooring the Gypsy King in round number 3 and being unfortunate to lose a split decision to the WBC champ. Now Hearn has confirmed that Joshua will take on the Cameroonian, opting for the crossover clash, which was labeled as a cash grab by Froch. Another option could have, as I just discussed, been a bout with Filip Hrgovic, which would likely be for a world title. But in an interview, Hearn defended the legitimacy of the Ngannou fight being a worthy challenger. Previous to the Fury fight, he said, it wasn't a fight that Joshua, was interested in. Obviously, we just boxed a guy in Otto Wallin that gave Fury a tough time. He cut him. I think he had 48 stitches. The fight should have been stopped, and Otto Wallin should have won that fight. But it is what it is. AJ went out, and it was a mismatch. He demolished Wallin, and I believe that we're going to do the same against Ngannou. He went on to further say, that performance over Tyson Fury was the moment that made this fight credible, and I felt like he beat Tyson Fury. If he didn't, it was around either way. So you can't really say that he's not a credible opponent. I heard Carl Froch and others say that this is a cash grab. No, this is a dangerous fight. AJ has a lot to lose here. Coming off that Wallin fight, in a wonderful position to go and fight for the IBF world title, which we hope will happen after the Francis Ngannou fight, but there's a lot of jeopardy in this fight. So let's see if, in fact, Joshua will eventually face Hrgovic for that likely vacant IBF crown. Good stuff. But here's a great story that I read over my coffee this morning and, quite frankly, had a good chuckle. And it all comes courtesy, shall I say, starts with O'Hara Davies and his excuse for losing without even throwing a punch against Ismael Barrasso recently and being leveled in the first round. Anyway, Davies, he's 25-3, by the way, out of the UK. As I said, was dropped in the opening seconds of the bout and bundled over again by a big combination after finding his feet. And gamely got up for a second time, but the referee, Ruiz, had seen enough and called off the match, okay? He said after the fight, I made a mistake and I paid for it. I threw a good shot. I tried to rush in. I ended up getting caught. I'm sorry. I didn't see this coming. I don't think anyone saw this coming, he said. And so from there, says the writers over at sportingnews.com, Davies should have come home to London, chilled out with friends and family, and ignored social media for a couple months. Instead, the 31-year-old boxer puncher seems to have felt the sting of his distractors and has responded in a video in which he essentially blames supplemental oxygen in a Las Vegas hotel for the setback. This is what he said. I wasn't sleeping that much. What I realized too late was they pump extra oxygen into the atmosphere so that people can be there all day gambling and not be tired. In the hotel room, there are these big effing air vents. I was going to bed at 11:30, 12 at night and getting up at 2 or 3 in the morning. On Saturday, I felt physically fatigued. That was the day I'd had my worst sleep. I had my worst sleep on the Friday night after the weigh-in. While jet lag and supplemental oxygen may have played a part in Davies' final preparations, fighters from the UK have been crossing the Atlantic and going through the same process in Las Vegas for decades. And if you've been knocked out in a single round, it's just not the time to bring it up. So the fellows and gals at Sport News took a look at some great excuses over the years after a boxer has been defeated and not held their tongues when they should have. So anyway, Trevor Berbick went into the ring and faced Mike Tyson back in 1986, November 22nd to be exact, and it was one of the most memorable knockouts in the sport's history. Berbick, then the WBC heavyweight champion, had already gotten off the floor in round number 2 when Tyson dropped him again with a ridiculously short left hook to the temple. The Jamaican-born Canadian needed 3 attempts to find his feet, by which time referee Mills Lane had seen enough. And his excuse? Berbick was convinced that poison had been filtered through an air vent in his Las Vegas hotel room. That's the only reason Tyson became the youngest heavyweight champ of all time. Wow. Deontay Wilder, when he met up with Tyson Fury on February 22nd back in 2020. After benefiting from a dubious scoring in his first fight with Tyson Fury, which was ruled a draw, Wilder agreed to a rematch. The pair met again in Las Vegas, and this time Wilder was beaten to a pulp. The Gypsy King scored 2 knockdowns and forced the American's corner to throw in the towel in round number 7. His excuse? Well, there was more than one, but the most famous is Wilder claiming that his legs were worn out because his walkout costume was too heavy at 45 pounds. This left him with no legs. Other reasons for Wilder's first loss included spiked water and an egg weight lodged inside Fury's glove. Third one, David Haye, who fought Vladimir Klitschko back in July 2nd, 2011. For several months, Haye had pursued then heavyweight champion Vladimir Klitschko with what amounted to obsession. However, when it mattered most, the Englishman failed to deliver in the ring. Haye, the reigning WBA heavyweight title holder, struggled to mount any kind of offense, and Klitschko piled on the pressure behind an educated jab and scored all the meaningful punches before walking away with a 12-round unanimous decision and another belt. The excuse? At the post-fight press conference, Hay revealed that he had broken his little toe. The excuse was roundly mocked by fans, media, and Klitschko himself. Poor fella. Tim Bradley, when he faced Manny Pacquiao back on April 12, 2014. Bradley had scored a contentious decision triumph over Manny Pacquiao in 2012, and there were immediate calls for a rematch. They squared off 2 years later, and Pacquiao got the best of it, controlling the action with his speed and superior work rate. Bradley had balance issues in the fight, but that was the least of his worries against the rampaging Filipino who was hell-bent on gaining revenge. After the fight, Bradley insisted that his decision not to wear socks and a soft canvas resulted in his first career defeat. Sympathy was in short supply. All right, Teofimo Lopez, who faced George Kambosos Jr. Remember this fight? November 27th, 2021. Following a history-making triumph over multi-weight world title holder Vasily Lomachenko, Lopez was the talk of the boxing world. George Kambosos, who, despite being unbeaten, was a significant underdog to prevail, fought the fight of his life at the theater at MSG, Madison Square Garden. The Australian dropped Lopez in a wild opening round, got off the floor, laid on himself, and earned the decision he was awarded. Wow. So what was his excuse? Months after the fight, Lopez told a host of boxing reporters that DAZN, who broadcast the Kambosos bout, played a hand in the decision. The insinuation was that a Kambosos victory would guarantee an undisputed title fight between the Australian and Devin Haney, whereas Lopez had planned to drop the titles he held immediately. The Haney versus Kambosos bout would eventually go ahead, but ESPN was the lead broadcaster. And there you have it, boxing fans. Thank you for joining me once again here in Talk and Fight. Appreciate it. Remember to like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell for me. And we'll see you tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern Time for another edition of Boxing News Today. Thank you.